Hi BookTube, Aaron here, hope you're doing very well. Today, hopefully for Poetry Thursday, I'm hoping to do something a little bit different. I'm thinking a little bit about what poetry I might be reading in the coming months and maybe trying to work out if I can put together a kind of seasonal list for autumn and maybe to spill over into the winter. And this might not necessarily be the next however many books of poetry that I read, but it's just like a nice little pile of books that I seem to be in the mood for and that seem to have a bit of an autumnal feeling to them. And so some of them are going to be first time reads, some of them are going to be rereads, some of them are favourite poets, some of them are poets I'm still kind of grappling with and trying to get to know a little bit better. I should say before I start, so the poetry that I'm reading at the moment, I'm making my way through the selected poems of Adonis, a Assyrian poet. Adonis was born in, I think, 1930, something like that, born under the name Ali Ahmad Saeed Esber, and this has been translated by Khaled Matawa, and it's really good stuff. He reminds me of quite a few different poets, and yet I think sort of in the future, if I was to sort of see one of his poems out of context, I might be able to guess that it was him. So there's definitely something quite distinctive about his poetry. But I've also been making my way through the cantos of Ezra Pound. This doesn't really feel that much like my day-to-day poetry reading. It's more a random project, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like I'm reading when I'm reading the cantos. And I'm also making my way through the complete poems and plays of T.S. Eliot as well, and I'm currently up to the plays, which is kind of why I'm looking for even more poetry. So once I'm done with Adonis, and certainly once I'm done with T.S. Eliot's plays, there'll be a little bit more space opening up in my reading that I'm hoping to fill up with some maybe quite autumnal poetry. So we'll start off then. And the first one here, like the T.S. Eliot, there's not really a cover to show you, but it's basically the selected poems of Robert Browning. I'm not sure how well you can see that there. A rather beaten up little pocket copy from probably the late 1800s or early 20th century. I'm not sure if it says. Oh yeah, 1894 this is from. So yeah, this is just a selection of his poetry. It doesn't have Sordello, which I'm sort of interested in trying at some point, and it doesn't have, is it The Ring in the Book, one of his other sort of crazier, longer poems. But I've dipped into this in the past, and it's actually still got, let's see if I can find it. Where did I put it? It's still got the receipt from when I bought it, and it cost me all of £6. And I got it from what was then my local bookshop in North Wales. It's called Browser's Bookshop. There's the receipt. So one used book £6 and one new book £16.99, which I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I went and checked, I think was the selected poems of Ted Hughes. But yeah, I've always felt there's something quite autumnal about Robert Browning, the kind of poems that you'd read by the fireside, and also this edition as well is very looks very autumnal as well. So that's the first one that I'm considering. We'll see whether I dip in and out of it or whether I make a project of it and read the whole thing. Because for a selection, it is actually quite long. It's a good 300 pages or so. So a very generous selection. Next up, a poet that I am often drawn to around this time of the year, usually around October and November, I start thinking about him. But I have been feeling a kind of pull to go back to him for a little while now. And that's Gerard Manley Hopkins. And really, I've just read a much smaller selection of his work, whereas this is, I think, the complete poetry, and then some prose in there as well. I'm just wondering whether it's got, yeah, it's got the Wreck of the Deutschland in there, which I've never read, so I'm looking forward to reading that. But anyway, Gerard Manley Hopkins. I'm not sure whether you would associate him with autumn, but for me, he's certainly a very autumnal poet. And then to a poet who I've tried in the past and enjoyed, and I could kind of see that there was something there, but didn't completely get, and I want to go for a second pass. And again, I'm not entirely sure if I'm not really sure if he belongs on the list on second thoughts. But I was thinking of trying him in autumn just to see whether reading it at a different time of year, at a time when my life is at a different pace, seeing whether that would affect how I read the poetry. So it might be a bit of an experiment. So it's a bit of a wild card on the list, maybe. But it's the half-finished heaven. So the selected poems of Tomas Tranströmer. It's selected and translated by Robert Bly. And yeah, I enjoyed it the last time, and I'd like to give it another go, and see what I get from it next time. And then we've got 3 more left, so kind of halfway through, and these are all these are all German poets in translation, and there is just something very, I don't know what it is, but I always feel there's something quite autumnal about German poetry. I don't know why. Certainly for this German poet, one of my favourites, Rainer Maria Rilke. This is a nice big selection of his poetry. It's essentially a collection of the best of Rilke. So it cuts out a good chunk of his early poetry. But then I think from the Book of Hours onwards, it's pretty much everything. And this is the translation by Edward Snow. And I think even before I'd read anything substantial by Rilke, I still associated him with autumn and with, falling leaves and walking through the woods on a moody day. And I don't know why that is. But I think he's got a few poems sort of addressed to autumn or written about autumn, and about the changing seasons. But even before I'd read those poems, I still associated him with autumn for some reason. And yeah, I don't know, this will feel like coming back to something that I love. But still, like Tomas Tranströmer, I'm hoping that I'll get something else from it, or that I'd get maybe a slightly deeper understanding of Rilke's poetry this time through. Definitely for this one, being a bit chunkier, I'd have to wait until I'd finished the T.S. Eliot book at least, before starting that. And then 2 more. This next one is a poet I haven't read before, and I'm just kind of hoping that it will fit in. And it's Heinrich Heine, his selected verse. And again, I'm not sure what the kind of feeling of the poetry will be, but with my just general association of German poetry with autumn, it's just sort of come up with these other books. This is a if I show you a random page, it's, yeah, this one will be a good one. so it's not a verse translation, so the original German is up here, and then we have a prose translation in the footnotes. So it might be a bit of an odd reading experience, but maybe it will stand out in its own way. I think I'd get used to it after a while. There are some where the footnotes are a little fuller, and so it's not going to be too straining to read them. And then the last one, not really too far away from Heinrich Heine, is Friedrich Hölderlin, Selected Poems and Fragments, which, like Tomas Tranströmer, I've read before and enjoyed, but just didn't quite get. And I'd like to, I think definitely with Hölderlin, I'd like to read it as slowly as I could, and to see, just to see what happens with that, to really stretch the reading experience out if possible. And I think I'd want to read this, if I do read it this autumn, I'd want to read it around November time, just as autumn is kind of bleeding into winter. Yeah, I mean, I can't really remember much at all of Hölderlin's poetry, and so it would be nice to go through slowly and see if I have anything anything interesting to tell you about Hölderlin. He certainly had an interesting life, and so yeah, that's forthcoming if all's well. But that's it. It's just a little short video where I just go through a random plan with a lot of this German poetry. I'm hoping to read Faust in November. So Faust parts 1 and 2 by Goethe, at least starting in November. And so I'm hoping that maybe not the Rilke so much, but definitely the Heine and the Hölderlin will create a nice ambience around Faust. That's the plan. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, let me show you my little stack, since it's quite manageable to pick up and show you. So here's my little list of poetry that I'm hoping to read through the autumnal months, and I'll let you know how it goes. Yeah, if you have any other recommendations you'd like to pass on, either for me or for anyone else watching, please let me know. I've noticed that this stack is quite dude heavy, so if there are any female poets that you associate with autumn, that you think I probably haven't heard of, or you haven't heard me talk about, then let me know about them as well, and I'll check them out. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.